You are Locked On Ole Miss, your daily podcast on the Ole Miss Rebels. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Happy pregame, everybody. Steven Willis, Locked On Ole Miss podcast, joining you. We're going to be joined in just a second by John Macon Gillespie from Ole Miss on SI. We'll talk about everything that you need to know leading up to this game, including, is Trevor Etienne going to play? How much is Trey Harris going to factor in? Just hang out for that. But it was really awesome. You know what? I'm just going to bring him in right now, and we're going to kind of go. So if you have any comments, please comment, but be sure and put where you're commenting from, because we are interested in that as well. Anyway, John Macon Gillespie from Ole Miss on SI is joining us today. You know, John, first, before we get started, this is potentially the biggest football game in Ole Miss history. This is probably the only thing close that Ole Miss has had in recent years is in 2003 against LSU. How does Oxford look? Is the weather affecting the crowd? Give me the lay of the land of what you're hearing up in North Mississippi right now.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think from what I've heard that the weather is really impacting the crowd like that. I do expect it to have somewhat of an impact on the game, but I think Oxford is kind of like a zoo today a little bit. I mean, it's going to be bonkers. I'll be leaving to head up there. Of course, it's just about an hour drive for me in just a little bit to get to get ready and make sure I'm able to fight the crowds and everything and get to the box in time. So, yeah, it's going to be a hectic one if you're a fan there today, as far as, you know, crowd size and everything like that. So prepare accordingly, and also prepare accordingly for the weather too if you're traveling in this morning.
So the reputation of Lane Kiffin not being able to win the big one, you're going to hear that in pregame if you're an Ole Miss fan for the next 3 hours leading up to this Georgia game. But I think that's kind of a lazy take right now, because if you keep knocking on the doors, eventually you're going to knock it down. Eventually that opportunity is going to come and you're going to pass that test. I do think this is a big test for Lane Kiffin, and I do think this is a legacy game for Lane Kiffin. I think this is a legacy game for Jaxson Dart too. John, you're going to have Jaxson Dart, who is the single game passing leader, the single game total offense leader, the single season passing leader, probably the single season total offense leader, probably. He's already holding the career total offense mark, and he's going to pass Eli if he averages 190 yards passing over his last 3 games. He is also the winningest quarterback in Ole Miss history. The only thing that Jaxson Dart is lacking to honestly have a statue that sits out between the pavilion and the stadium is winning one of these elevating games like Archie Manning did in 1969. They did a story on Marty and McGee this morning on the SEC network, and they brought up an interesting factoid that I think is another thing that could play into this game. Archie Manning set that unbreakable total offense mark in 1969 against Alabama. That happened to where he came out and played amazing and all of that stuff. The very next week, they beat Georgia in Jackson. Georgia was 6th ranked in the country, and Archie Manning led them to a victory. If Jaxson Dart can do something similar, we're talking about statues. If Lane Kiffin can do something similar, we're honestly getting to the point where we need to start thinking about statues with him as well. This is a very much a legacy-defining game.
Yeah, I think you're right. I think that if Ole Miss wins, I don't know that it can be, and I know it's just one game. I don't a lot of times like to lean into that cliche that, hey, one game can mean so much, but this one really does, I think, from a regular season perspective, in the short term and the long term, really, if you think about it, because, you know, Ole Miss winning today would obviously keep its college football playoff hopes alive. That being the short term, and then in the long term, you've got to think about what it means for fans when they look back on the season, when they look back on this team, look back on this game, what it would mean. Because Ole Miss winning today, I think, would signify a lot of things, and one of those being that you overcame the adversity from dropping those early games against Kentucky and LSU. And in a lot of ways, you'd kind of be doing what that 2003 team didn't do against LSU. You know, they had a couple losses going into that LSU game as well, and, you know, weren't able to pull that one out. So you would kind of be, you know, riding the ship from a history perspective there a little bit. So yeah, I think you're right. I think this is this is a really, really big game for a lot of reasons for Ole Miss today.
Yeah, there's a lot of a 2008 feeling with this football team right now as well. Against Arkansas, Jaxson Dart kind of had his LSU moment to where he was doing what Devin Sneed did, and those guys got rolling, and everybody knows the Tim Elko baseball thing, don't let the Rebs get hot. There's a little bit of a correlation potentially there if Ole Miss can win the game. So we'll see what happens. Injury-wise, one thing's interesting. We'll talk about Trey Harris in the second segment in the Ole Miss injury report this week. But the rumor and the intel coming in out of Athens is Trevor Etienne is going to play today. It's a situation to where he's going to be on a pitch count. You're not going to see a full go Trevor Etienne, but him playing a little bit, there's at least something to that. Ole Miss fans should pay attention to that.
Yeah, I think so. And with the way that the weather's going to be today, as far as offenses being able to establish a rhythm, I think is going to be a big key today. And from Ole Miss's perspective, they have not been able to establish a running game really at all in conference play, not very consistently anyway. I think that whichever team is able to better establish a ground attack is going to have a little bit of an advantage today as far as that's concerned, just because of the weather. Now, I don't think the weather's going to be like that massive of a deal. I think Ole Miss will still be able to throw it around and things like that, but still, it is something you have to keep in mind.
Yeah, and the rain on the ground makes a soggy field, which is advantage offense. A soggy field is always advantage offense. You can't rush the passer like you normally do. The defensive backs has trouble whenever really skilled players who know where they want to go is going and you're reacting to it. You're going to be at a disadvantage there. So we'll see exactly how that goes. This is a game that, John, it's been so weird, and I've been on this all week, and you probably monitored my Twitter thread and can agree with this. The Vegas line for this has just been absolutely weird. This is the biggest trap line I've ever seen that Vegas has put out. And when I say trap line, I'm not saying the result of the game. I'm saying the result of what Vegas is trying to trap people into doing because they think the other is going to happen. The line all week was Georgia minus 2.5 points, a 2.5-point favorite. It went down last night to Georgia minus 1.5. But you look at the stats on the game, and over 85% of the bets are still coming in on Georgia. Vegas is like, hey, come on in. The water's fine. This is awesome. You should bet on Georgia. If you do that, you're probably going to be able to beat the house. And everybody knows that you can beat the house from time to time. So come on in. The water's fine. But this line, I think Vegas thinks Ole Miss is going to win this game outright.
The way that it looks, I mean, I was kind of surprised last night when the line shifted like it did, because I noticed that as well, that it shifted down to, what is it, 1.5 now, I think.
It's 1.5 on FanDuel, and it's 1 on Bet Online.
Yeah, so I mean, it's almost a pick 'em essentially. I mean, that's kind of the way it looks, and if what you're reading into that is accurate, then yes, I think I agree with that. Vegas really seems to think Ole Miss has more than a puncher's chance in this thing. That they may think, Ole Miss has the better chance in this thing. And I can kind of see if that's the case where they're coming from with that. Looking at some of the stats this week from a season long perspective, but I mean, you ask the casual fan, they're going to take Georgia in this game. And I don't know, maybe Vegas has a finger on the pulse of something that the casual fan does not.
Thanks again for making the Locked On Ole Miss podcast your first and listen every day. When we come back, we will let you know the status of Trey Harris and what I think is going to happen. So stick around for that. When you're hiring for your small business, you want to find the best professionals for the role, right? That's why you need to check out LinkedIn Jobs. They've got the tools to help you find the right candidates for your team faster and for free. And from my own experience, when I was hiring for my team, I knew how important it was to have quality candidates lined up. With LinkedIn Jobs, I was able to find top-notch professionals quickly, which saved me so much time. Their platform has made it easy to sift through and find the perfect fit, which sets up LinkedIn Jobs and makes them stand alone. It is not just a job board. LinkedIn helps you connect with professionals you cannot find anywhere else. Many of them might not be actively job hunting, but they're open for the right opportunity if it comes along. In fact, over 70% of LinkedIn users don't even visit other leading job sites. So if you're not searching on LinkedIn, you're missing out. Plus, 86% of small businesses get a qualified candidate within 24 hours on LinkedIn. Ready to make the right hire? Post your job for free at linkedin.com/lockedoncollege. That's linkedin.com/lockedoncollege to post your job for free. Terms and conditions apply. All right, John. The injury report that came out on Wednesday was comically long. It just was. There was, I think, 26 names on it. I mean, it's a situation where is Lane virtually faking injuries on these injury reports at this point? And then you're like, let's see how it goes over the course of the week. And surely everything moved down. Everything got ready. And right now you have Trey Harris listed as questionable in the last injury report. And you have Jordan Watkins listed as probable. And my intel that I've gotten on this one and rumors flowing around is Trey Harris is going to go today. And he could have gone against Arkansas, but that game got out of hand so quickly, he didn't have to. And Jordan Watkins, I listen, I'm sure something might have happened in practice, but Arkansas didn't touch Jordan Watkins enough to injure him. Yeah, I mean, he just didn't. So everybody knew there was some gamesmanship happening with this injury report. I think Ole Miss might be as healthy as they have been all season long against the Georgia Bulldogs, which is honestly perfect.
Yeah, and your assessment of that is the kind of same way I viewed it too. I of course viewed it from a couple different lenses. Was that okay? One, if this is accurate, this is really bad. The one that came out on Wednesday, but I was thinking to myself, with Watkins, I mean, something would have had to have happened in practice because nothing happened on Saturday. I mean, we all saw that he was fine and put up ridiculous numbers against Arkansas and was hardly touched, like you said, things like that. So, yeah, I think you're right, and it would be big for Ole Miss to get Trey Harris back today. I mean, it's been what two games now that he hasn't played since the LSU game. But the offense looked good last week. But I do think that having him back against Georgia would be a really big boost, especially with how the weather's going to be. I think Jaxson Dart's going to need maybe his presence on the field today against a really good defense. So, yeah, it would be big. But I do think that you're right that there was some gamesmanship going on there with that thing on Wednesday, because I even said it, and you're in the group message where I said there's no way there's 26 players who are needed to be on this list. Like there's just no way that has happened. So yeah,
I could have drawn up that injury report, and I haven't seen 1 minute of practice.
Yeah, pretty much. So I mean, that's but I didn't fully buy it when it came out on Wednesday, and it looks like either things have miraculously taken a turn for the better, or there was gamesmanship involved. I'm leaning to the latter.
And Kirby's doing that as well, because he was obviously playing with Trevor Etienne. So when Trevor Etienne goes on the field, everybody's going to say, oh, he's playing. Because I think he was listed as a game time decision. And there's going to be everybody can probably expect game time decisions today. You're going to hear that Trey Harris and Caden Priest-Corner, and there's a whole lot of game time decisions. I don't know if I would completely worry about that. I think Ole Miss is going to be all right. They have Kalepo back. I think Ole Miss might be able to run the football a little bit today. Georgia's defense has not been Georgia's defense of the past. They're giving up over 100 yards rushing per game. I'm not saying that Ole Miss is going to go off and run for 250. I'm saying that occasionally Ole Miss is going to make a 2nd and 6 happen. That's what I'm saying there. I think Dominic Thomas, Ulysses Bentley, and maybe Rashard Amos, who has come off the injury report recently. So there's a good chance that we could see Rashard Amos play a role in this game. So Ole Miss's running attack might look completely different than it has, just because of the different running backs that are available.
They need it to today. And because I think, again, I keep going back to the weather. I don't want to beat that point home that this is going to be like a massive deciding factor in this game. I guess it could be, but I don't see it that way. But I do think when it's raining, you do need to be able to establish some form of running game, and that's something Ole Miss has struggled with in recent weeks. And having a healthier offensive line, one, is going to help with that, and two, having this particular availability of running backs, I think if Ole Miss leans into it the right way, can make that happen as well. So yeah, I think you're right. And excuse me, I'll be interested to see how many touches Bentley gets today. I mean, we've been talking about that all season, but I think against Georgia today, he needs to get first crack at this thing. And when Parrish went down last week, of course, the game was kind of out of hand anyway, but you didn't see much of Bentley after Parrish went down. So, I think that'll be something interesting to follow as well.
Yeah, and listen, I think Jaxson Dart is going to have a role running the football today. You're going to see quarterback powers. You're going to see them intentionally do that. This is the game where they have to do it because Kirby's kryptonite on Georgia's defense has been for the last 15 years a running quarterback. If your quarterback can run, because Kirby's defense is known to lean on two-man. And when I say two-man, I mean they're playing man coverage underneath and they have two safeties over the top. So they protect their defense. And the way that you beat two-man is through a running quarterback. So if Ole Miss can scheme up some stuff in the pass game and turn it into a run play around the end, they might be able to get some cheap yards. And also, I think this might be a two-script game. This might be a two-script game. And what I mean by that is the first script for Lane Kiffin, he's excellent at it. He scored a touchdown. He scored a touchdown last year against Georgia on his script. The opening game script for Ole Miss is absolutely fantastic. I think there needs to be a second script that anticipates how it's going to be adjusted to give Georgia a different picture of what's going on and kind of confuse them, because Georgia's reaction and the way they react to things is honestly one of the strengths of their whole football team.
Yeah, I think you're right. And obviously kind of like you said, the opening script that Kiffin and I guess Weiss run out pretty much on a weekly basis is usually pretty elite. I mean, that a lot of times that's in recent games, that's been the peak efficiency of Ole Miss's offense is on those scripted drives, which it is for a lot of teams anyway. But yeah, I mean, if you can anticipate how Georgia will react to your first script and then roll out with a second one, I think that would be really big because, now obviously there's a little bit of guesswork involved in that. But if you can hit it right, I mean, you're looking at potentially two scores early there.
Yeah, Lane knows Kirby. Lane knows what that defense does against certain things, and he knows what they suffer with. We all remember that Lane Kiffin talking about whenever he had that crazy game in 2020 where Nick Saban's like he knew exactly what to do, and everything that Ole Miss did was what Alabama had trouble with. Ole Miss is going to try and do some of the same stuff to Kirby Smart and Georgia. And you know how that Kirby adjusts to what you're going to try and do, and you can attack that. I think there's a little bit of an advantage to be had if you go down that road.
Yeah, definitely. And it does help that Lane is familiar with Kirby and what he does defensively. I think that 2020 game against Alabama was even wasn't that the one where Saban said accused Ole Miss of stealing signs? Wasn't that same game?
That may have been that, which is hilarious because in 2014 or 2015, it was 2012 or 13 where Tyler Siskey literally had binoculars out looking at the Ole Miss signs people. So it's like, come on, be quiet.
Yeah. So but it does help that he is familiar with what Kirby does, because you can potentially draw up a second script that way. Knowing, okay, if we run this on this first possession, how are they going to come out in the second possession and adjust? You can kind of anticipate that a little bit.
Yeah, and honestly, what makes Lane such a great play caller and his reputation is his ability to do that kind of on the fly. So he kind of, even if he doesn't have a true second script, he has a second script in his mind of what's going on. Thanks again for making the Locked On Ole Miss podcast your first listen every day. When we come back, We will get to your comments in the comment section, and we'll give our final thoughts on Ole Miss and Georgia. Stick around. With Robinhood Gold, you do not need a silver spoon to eat up the financial favors of the 1%. Robinhood Gold allows others to get the rates and perks usually reserved for high society. Now, the resourceful individual with Robinhood Gold can earn the very liberal rate of 4.5 APY on uninvested cash and be rewarded with a handsome 3% retirement boost on an IRA account. Robinhood Gold provides the privileges of the high net worth with the any net worth. These generous benefits are now available for just $5 per month. The new gold standard is here with Robinhood Gold. Sign up at robinhood.com/gold. Terms apply. For specific disclosures, visit robinhood.com/gold. Investing, of course, involves risk. Rate may change. Gold membership is offered by Robinhood Gold, LLC. Get ready to tackle the NFL action with FanDuel. It is America's #1 sports book because right now new customers can bet $5 and get $150 in bonus bets if you win. The FanDuel Sportsbook gives you everything you need to place live bets on the NFL all in one place. Hey, Ole Miss is currently a 1.5-point underdog versus the Georgia Bulldogs, a line that I expected all week to move. And the bets and the stats say that the line should move, but the line actually went the other way. So I have a hunch Vegas knows something, and I have a hunch Ole Miss is likely going to win this game, or at least Vegas thinks that. So when you get a hunch in the middle of the game, you can check out the latest stats, view latest play-by-play, and so much more on the same page where you place your bets. Just visit FanDuel.com to join today. You'll get started with $150 in bonus bets if your first $5 bet wins. That's FanDuel.com. Never waste a hunch and make every moment more with FanDuel, an official sportsbook partner of the NFL. All right, we're going to go into the comments, and then at the end, we're going to get the final thoughts on this game from John Macon Gillespie, but a good number of people have done this today. We have Alan Sorens who says, I think Trey Harris plays today. All our chips are on the table for this game. Yeah, nobody, I think, is going to be just unavailable in this game. I think Cedric Beavers is back for this game. He's a corner that probably is not going to play very much today, but he's somebody that had been on the injury report for most of the season, is out, and he's not out anymore. And he's already past that red shirt line. So I think at least on special teams, people should expect to see Cedric Beavers.
Yeah, I think so. And I kind of agree with that assessment that if you can physically suit up and go today for Ole Miss, I think you're going to suit up and go today, because this game means so much, not just for this season, but for the, I don't know if grand scheme of the program is the right term, but yeah, it definitely does.
Jeff Ferguson says, hello from Pontotoc, Mississippi. Ole Miss can win this game simply by not making stupid mistakes and not having crazy penalties. I think I'm going to add on this one. Ole Miss does not need to go for a single fourth down in minus territory. That is their own territory. 4th and 1 against Georgia is a trap. And there's been hundreds seemingly of Georgia football games in the last 10 years to where it's 13-10 in the third quarter and you think you have a chance, and all of a sudden a couple of explosive defensive plays and it's 27-10 and it's over. I think that Lane Kiffin has to play very conservative and by the numbers in this game.
I think you're right. I mean, you have to lean into your defense almost in this game from an Ole Miss perspective, because I mean that's really been the strength of this team for most of the season, and not going forward on 4th down and 1 in minus territory, like you said. Like I can see it in Georgia territory, but not going forward in minus territory, I think will be big, will be important there, because trust your defense to get stops and get off the field and confuse Carson Beck and all those things.
James York says, hello from Vicksburg. Let's go Rebs. Been waiting for this game all season. Play clean, play smart, control the tempo, fast or slow. Let's do this. I do think tempo is going to play a role in this game. And just like you said, protect the defense. Ole Miss needs to occasionally play slow in this game.
Yeah, they should, in my opinion. I mean, I know that the offense tends to lose some of its efficiency when you do that, but from in Lane Kiffin's offense anyway. But I think in games like this, you almost have to at times to kind of like I said, play to your defense in a sense.
Six String says, greeting from Nashville. Oh, I get it. Six String. That's pretty cool. We need offense, defense, and special teams hitting on all cylinders, plus no turnovers, minimal penalties. Yeah, it has to be a clean game. Ole Miss needs to just replicate what they did against Arkansas, and they'll be fine against Georgia.
Yeah, if you beat yourself in this game, I mean you're really behind the eight ball because there have been a couple times this season. Oklahoma comes to mind where Ole Miss had a sloppy first half penalty wise, and they were able to bounce back from that because frankly Oklahoma's not very good. So you were able to bounce back from that. But against Georgia, they can make you pay if you're beating yourself like that.
James McDonald says, I hope we can create turnovers on the defense. That's going to be important in this game because Carson Beck is only human. I mean, he's just another person. He's a talented human, but he's just human. So it's somebody that has an obvious confidence lull, which he is sitting in right now. It's going to be on to Ole Miss to help him out. So I'm looking at Pete Golding to try and heat him up a little bit over the course of the game. And with a wet football, I don't care if it's not raining very much, it's still going to change what's going on. All of that in his head is going to be a little slower. I think this defense has a chance to hunt a little bit today.
They should. To me, that's one of the biggest keys today. We haven't talked about it a ton, but being able to confuse Carson Beck, get some pressure on him because in recent weeks he has obviously struggled with the turnover in the turnover department. So I think that getting some pressure on him, maybe confusing him in the secondary a little bit with some coverages, that'll be big.
James McDonald says Lane Kiffin's going to be on SEC Nation at 11 a.m. I think that is right before the first games kicks off or whatever. That may be Eastern. I do not know, but it appears that Lane's going to be on that. All right, let's turn our attention to the game itself. What is your opinion? How does this football game play out for Ole Miss?
Right now, and I actually don't feel great about this. I am leaning Georgia by about 3 points right now. I don't feel super confident in that because of how the line has gone. I usually pay attention to that pretty closely. But right now I'm leaning Georgia, but I would not be surprised at all if Ole Miss wins this game. And the more time that passes, the more I'm starting to think Ole Miss might win this thing. It'll be interesting to see. I mean, I think that, like I said, the keys to me for this game are going to be getting to Carson Beck for Ole Miss, getting some pressure on him, confusing him, forcing him into some errors. And on the flip side, for Ole Miss's offense, I think you have to be able to establish a semblance of a running game and take care of the football when you're throwing it around because if you can keep Georgia's defense honest there, I think it's going to open up the passing game, which is obviously the strength of this offense. So those are the two things I'll be watching today. Right now, I lean Georgia by about 3, but ask me closer to kickoff, and I may be leaning the other way.
This game, I think it's going to look kind of similar to the 1989 Ole Miss Georgia game in Oxford. That's a game that Ole Miss ended up winning, I think, 17-13. That was the Reed Hines game for people that are historians of what's going on. I think that Ole Miss is going to take the opening script and go down and score a touchdown, and they're going to go into the first half at like 10-3. I think Kirby is going to make adjustments and do what he does because Georgia and Kirby makes adjustments. They're going to score 10 points in the third quarter. And going into the fourth quarter, it's going to be 13-10. And Ole Miss is going to put that drive together at the end of the game and actually win the game. The playoff hopes are going to be alive. And this bye week is going to be completely different than the last one.
It needs to be, man. I mean, the last bye week, I mean, all hope wasn't lost, but man, it was a rough feeling right there. I mean, because you never want to go into a bye week on a loss, but the way that Ole Miss went into the last one with how they lost to LSU, I mean, you had Sontaran Perkins with Garrett Nussmeier in his grasp to make it 4th and like 26 or something. I don't remember what it was, but yeah, the way they lost that game really, I think, affected things during that bye week. And if you win this game, I mean, you're looking at a pretty positive bye week next week with 2 very winnable games left on the schedule heading into late November and early December.
Yeah. And what do you got going on at Ole Miss on SI today?
We're going to be having I'm going to put up our game predictions here in just a minute. once I get off the air with you, and we'll have an in-game blog type thing. I'll be handling that in the press box today. We'll have some breaking news stuff as it happens during the game up on the site. Then we'll have a halftime piece, post-game recap, and then post-game stuff going on throughout the night and into tomorrow. Some analysis type things. And then tomorrow morning, we'll obviously be looking at AP poll, which doesn't really have much of an impact on anything anymore, but we'll still look at it. And then on Tuesday, I guess the updated college football playoff rankings.
Yeah. And before we get out of here, you listen. The Trey Harris injury stuff, nobody's going to know until pregame warmups. They're going to say 15 different things, but unless you see the guy on the football field, you don't see the guy on the football field. If he's in uniform going through warmups, that's important. So pay attention to what's going on. If he does have a groin injury like it's expected, a soggy field could be problematic, but I think if he can try to go, he's going to try and go in this game. Everybody's going to play in this football game, John.
I think they should. I think it would be foolish to not. I mean, because what are you saving them for at this point? If they're a little banged up and you're worried about the future, what are you really saving them for? Unless it's a playoff run, but you're not going to have a playoff run unless you win this game.
Yeah,
I mean, period. That's the way you have to look at it. So if you can suit up, even if you're not 100%, I think you're going to see them suit up today.
Yeah. And Trevor Etienne playing a little bit, but he'll have a pitch count in this game for Georgia, likely. That's my intel from the Athens people. Anyway, John, take care. After the game, everybody tune in about 60 minutes after the game. We'll be unbelievably elated or unbelievably depressed. Tune in right here, get in the comment section, and tell me how big of an idiot I am or how much I was right, and we'll all have a good time with that. Then go over to Ole Miss on SI and see all of their post-game coverage as well. Anyway, for John Macon Gillespie, I'm Steven Willis. It's the biggest game in Ole Miss history, and I'm here for it, finally. Anyway, be safe heading up to Oxford, John. Thank you very much, bud.
All right. Thank you, Steven.